Without further ado, please welcome Holly Atkinson to the stage. She's going to tell us about her journey from business development to blockchain dev.
Thank you.
There you go, lovely.
And it's the down button, right?
Yes.
Okay. Can everyone hear me in the back? Yep, great. So yeah, I'm here to talk to you about my journey from working in business development for a green energy company to what I'm going to be doing full-time from next month, which is working as a developer. So who am I? I'm originally from Derby. I'm 33, and I grew up in Derby, and I went to university in Nottingham, where I studied physics with French. And after that, I did what a lot of people do. I moved to London, and I took the first job that would pay me enough to actually live in London, because it's pretty expensive. And I worked in London ever since. So from 2007, when I moved to London, I worked in a number of commercial or transaction-based roles, spanning data services, corporate banking, working for the energy regulator, and most recently working in green energy for a Danish company called Ørsted. I don't know that any of you will know Ørsted, but their focus is on designing and building offshore wind farms. And my role for Ørsted was to secure new offshore wind farm development projects by negotiating contracts for them to actually then go ahead and build the wind turbines in the sea. So pretty different to coding. And in terms of the coding, I actually touched on it as part of my degree, which I now don't remember really, it was a long time ago. And in any case, I did MATLAB, which isn't really used in a lot of areas now outside of mathematical data processing. That's what it's for. And it was really in the last few years of my working life so far that I kind of had this niggling feeling that something wasn't quite right. And despite working for a very progressive, sustainable energy company, it didn't feel like my achievements there were things that I was really proud of. I was feeling a lot more proud of things I was doing outside of work, things like coding challenges, because I was doing a bit of coding around my full-time job, doing free online stuff, and other stuff like I did a Tough Mudder. I was really proud of myself for that. But my actual day job, I wasn't really deriving a lot of satisfaction from, even though on paper it looked great and I was part of an amazing team there. So I was thinking a lot, you know, why? What's up with me? What's wrong with me? I didn't really know what to do, and it took me a long time to work this out. And it wasn't until I received a message from someone really important, really close to me, that things started to fall into place. So this is me, but back in the 90s, when clearly I was a lot cooler. And what happened was I actually found a diary hidden away. And I'll read it for those of you who can't see it, but it says, in 2020, I would like to be a systems programmer and work with computers, or work with computers in a language, French, or I'd like to be an astronaut. I'd like to help create films like Toy Story on computer. And that's amazing to me. Amazing because that's a very specific goal for someone who's between the age of 10 and 15 to have. And I'm guessing the age from when Toy Story came out, which I think was 1995. But also because I wanted to do that more than actually being an astronaut. But that's a good backup option for sure. So I decided, I was working in my full-time job for Ørsted. I decided that I was going to follow up this coding thing. I knew from doing some stuff in my spare time that I quite liked it. I felt quite engaged with it. So I was going to follow up on that. And I'd also been hearing this buzzword, blockchain. Blockchain, blockchain, blockchain. And I decided I was going to figure out what that meant. I decided to do a coding bootcamp. So many of you will have heard about coding bootcamps now. There's quite a few of them. The one that I decided to do was with Flatiron School. They're based in Moorgate, and they moved over from the US fairly recently, in the last year or so. And I decided to do the software engineering immersive course there. And that spans a bunch of different languages, frameworks, and libraries. Some of them are listed here, and this is roughly the order that I did them in. And it spans the back-end stuff, which is the behind-the-scenes bit, to the front-end stuff, which is the bit you see on the screen, hence the phrase full stack. This is the stack. And the main reason for me for choosing to leave my job to do a bootcamp was I wanted to commit fully to the learning process, but in an environment where there were lots of other like-minded people, people who might be really wanted to change it up. And I was scared. It was pretty scary leaving a job, especially after not having had breaks from a career for so long. 11 years is a long time. I was worried about being older than everyone else, about being a woman in the coding space. But actually, I needn't have worried. I now have a portfolio of projects. I can make stuff from start to finish using the languages that I learned at Flatiron, but also some other stuff that I taught myself. I taught myself a bit of Solidity, a bit of blockchain stuff while I was there. And I'm really proud of my final project, which is the one with the dog, which actually involved blockchain as well as the tech stack I learned on the bootcamp. And that's not the end of it. I'm really pleased to say that since graduating, and I only graduated on the 8th of March, on International Women's Day, coincidentally, I'm really happy that I've actually received a job offer already to work in the blockchain space. So, thank you. For anyone who's thinking of switching things up, there is the opportunity to do that. There is a need for it, and there are so many resources there to help you. The emoji hasn't come up, but anyway, it's a brain exploding one. Because in retrospect, it sounds pretty frictionless, but it really wasn't. As I mentioned, it took a long time to make my decision, and I procrastinated a lot along the way. So I wanted to share 6 things I learned from my career change that I hope will help anyone else who feels a bit stuck with making changes yourselves. Ooh, what's this one?
You'll have to describe them.
Doesn't matter. I think it's the detective face. Anyway, figure out your drivers. So one of the most useful tools that I stumbled across, and I read a lot of self-help books, some of them more useful than others. One of the more useful ones is an old one called Who Do You Think You Are? The first bit was fairly useful. It had some quite practical exercises in there around looking back at your achievements and looking for themes. So for me, it was problem solving. The reason I liked coding in my spare time and found it so engaging was because I really liked being in the middle of a problem and then resolving it and moving on to the next one, and I kept going. But for other people, it may be helping others in some way. You may have different drivers. But that book helped me figure it out. Next, for anyone looking to switch things up a bit, I would suggest just having a go at something. Pick anything, come up with a list, but pick something and do one of those things. I spent so much time trying to prioritize my options, figure out my options, but actually I found that having a go at one of those things, it helps you figure out more quickly whether you're good at it or whether it's something that you enjoy. Also talk to someone if you're struggling with your choices. For me, I found talking to a life coach very helpful, and I spoke to one around this time last year. And the reason I found it helpful was because it gave me some clarity on my own behaviour, and I realised that I didn't need permission from anyone to make changes to my own life. I could make those changes, and also no one else was going to give me permission anyway. If you're making changes, look after yourself while you're doing it, because if you might be worried, you might be stressed, and it can be very mentally draining. For me, it was helpful to meditate, do a whole bunch of exercise, and get sleep. But sometimes when we're busy, we can forget to do these basic things. And when you're ready, you'll be able to remove things from your life that are no longer serving you. So I dismantled my life to a certain extent. I left my job. It was really scary, but ultimately liberating. And I was really fortunate to have a good group of people around me while I did that. Then you'll be in a position to reassemble your life. Add those bits in that you want to focus on. Add those activities that you're really interested in, really passionate about. So for me, doing the boot camp was key, but also doing other events like going to work on blockchain workshops. And I think Patrick's going to touch on that a bit later as well. But other meetups. And I also reached out to my existing network on LinkedIn and other social media, because I realized I already knew people that were in the space I wanted to get into. And that was very helpful. And it turns out they don't mind talking to me. So that was really, really interesting. But ultimately, it was so important for me to expand my comfort zone, to keep on learning, because that got me where I wanted to get to, and it would get you to where you want to get to as well. So that's me. These are the resources that I found helpful during my journey. And if anyone wants to talk to me about anything I've mentioned, or if you want to have a chat later, come grab me or find me on LinkedIn. Thanks.
Excellent. Big round of applause for Holly. Thank you, Maddie.